Welcome to Pressure Points. Our topic is SpaceX acquires xAI. I want to walk through how all this came together and what the important implications are for the companies from a business standpoint, financially, and kind of the bigger Elon vision. So we'll start with the top is the most important vector to this has to do with data centers in the sky. Data centers, of course, we think about AWS, we think about Google Cloud, Azure, those types of things. Think of that as the brain of AI that sits here on good old Earth. So putting these data centers in the sky has two distinct advantages. The first is related to power. And when you have a satellite it has better access to solar and doesn't have the liability of cooling either. And so from a power perspective, much more efficient. As we think about these data centers on Earth and think about the inference piece going beyond the training, which some of them are often used for, to what will be exponential use around inference, the power is going to be an increasing problem, and that is partially solved by putting things into space. So power maintenancing piece. The second advantage is there are no boundaries like a terrestrial boundary. And think about how the internet gets used as a tool, whether it is something that is not accessible in certain parts of the world, that could be far out places. And separately is how geopolitical winds impact the use of it. Think about more recently what's going on in Iran, and think about the Ukraine piece and how Starlink has played an important role. That idea of internet with no boundaries is powerful. Data center with no boundaries has a similar appeal to it because it just gets much more difficult to be cut off. And so those are the kind of the two central benefits why Elon believes that, in fact, something as crazy as a data center in the sky makes a ton of sense. And so that's the big picture. So if you're Elon, you have this belief. How do you pursue the belief? You bring together the best company that is good at bringing objects into space, that of course SpaceX, and then you bring the best company in terms of scaling up data centers, and that is xAI. Colossus, their first big cluster, these are coherent clusters, and they just basically put a lot of NVIDIA chips together. That started out as 100,000 GPUs and now is about 200,000. And that compares to kind of Meta is probably right around that 200,000 number right now. Microsoft and Azure, maybe 100, 150,000. So Colossus in a short amount of time got very big. So there's like core expertise into building these coherent clusters together. They also are working, started in 2025 on this Colossus 2, which could be up to over 500,000 GPUs. And so a ton of GPUs, much kind of a 2.5x the size of what Colossus 1 is. So they've got a lot of muscle when it comes to xAI does when it comes to building data centers. And so that's kind of the synergy piece that brings these two together. So that's really the pressure point. That's why this is all happening. I want to go a couple layers deeper just on the business side. Another benefit is at the core also within xAI is Grok. Elon's talked about the importance of that in terms of writing software, and that's going to be an important tool that xAI will be able to use to continue to advance everything they do to have better coding tools within and internally and in-house. On the financial side, by bringing these companies together and eventually SpaceX going public, it gives some more flexibility for Elon to fund what's going on the AI front with xAI internally. And so that makes that just a little bit easier. It'll be an easier mechanism once it's a public company to do that. And then on the vision side, this really lays the groundwork for Elon to achieve what he's been talking about for some time now, which is creating the most valuable company on Earth. Of course, that was largely talked about with Tesla. There's a different conversation related to the Tesla and how this all fits, if it does fit together. But more importantly is that just even having these two together creates an opportunity for him to cast a vision that no other company can put out there. And when you have those resources at your disposal to be able to go after something that no other company can do, that creates an opportunity to create the world's largest company. And so the target is basically NVIDIA. That's about 4.5 trillion. Bloomberg is reporting that the valuation on this combined valuation for SpaceX and xAI is about 1.25 trillion. Now, the last xAI round was at 230 billion back in December recently, and the last SpaceX round was at 800 billion back in December. And so if you kind of put those two together, there's basically 200 billion in incremental value that's kind of being talked about here, assuming the Bloomberg reporting is accurate. And it's hard to say where that gets assessed. Maybe all that comes from the SpaceX improvements over the past month and a half, and the xAI is kind of at that same valuation. Still to be determined, but either way, you just get like a general view of this is kind of tracking around a 1.2 trillion-ish dollar company, and the target out there when it comes to the vision of being the largest company is that NVIDIA target at 4.5 trillion. So just overall, my personal take on it is it's exciting. It's exciting to see these visions come together and just going after something that no other company can do. So I guess we'll have to come up with a new acronym for the Mag 7 here once SpaceX xAI enters the fold in the next year or so. On behalf of Pressure Points, I'm Gene. Bye for now.